Welcome to the Building Doctor Show with Jens Johansson.
All right. Welcome to the Building Doctor Show. I'm your host, Jens Johansson. Glad to see you here to learn more about your buildings. Today, we're going to be talking about why you need a manager and what a good manager really does and how to find the right one for your community. So if you're joining us on the podcast or YouTube today, thanks for listening, but you're missing out on the ability to ask live questions. So make sure you sign up, visit our website, j2consultants.com, to register for the Building Doctor Show and attend live via Zoom. I hope lots of you that are attending live today have questions. They help steer the show. They help us really dig in and answer what you've got going on and give value to everybody. So our producer, Carolyn, will be monitoring the chat, and I'll go through the Q&A panel at the end of the show. Make sure you put your questions in the Q&A and check that chat, as Carolyn will be having a few handouts for you on this show. We've got some guides together. Also, stick around. We're doing a raffle giveaway, so you can win some cool J2 stuff. And then remember, this show is for educational content only. We're not giving legal or financial advice. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons and ask questions. Those all help our ratings and fuel our desire to create more content. So let's get into it. Here we go. Why you need a good manager. What a good manager really does. Where we see boards struggle with management and managers. Some of them are trying to do it themselves. Some of them trying to use a manager, trying to do just financials, calling it management. How to find that manager who is the right fit and what not to expect from your manager. And we'll even, I think we have a couple of pre-questions here that we talk about that. So let's dive in. So this can be a heavy slide. So you are running a small city. You are the mayor of a small city. There's rules. You have bills to pay and to collect. So that's the AR and AP, accounts receivable, accounts payable. You essentially have taxation with reserves and dues. You even have policing behaviors with fines and penalties. And you can even take away real property through foreclosure action. And you kind of said, hey, I just wanted to be an involved, good neighbor, and I've got a little bit of experience in business management. I thought I would volunteer. So let's talk about this. So your community is a corporation, usually a nonprofit. And depending on your size, you have tens of millions of dollars of assets under management. So if you have 100 units and their assessed value is $500,000 a unit, that is a $50 million corporation you are running. Kind of let this sink in a little bit. Maybe add up your assessed values or units and you might change your perspective. You might even start wearing a suit and tie to the board meetings. And so when we say it this way, I see board members kind of sit up in their chair a little bit and sit a little straighter, shoulders a little broader. And they say, wow, yeah, you're right. My assessed value are, $1 million a unit. We've got 100 units. You've got $100 million city you're running. And so how can we use a good manager and how can we make our job easier? We really just signed up to be a good neighbor. I don't really want to be the police. I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to take somebody's unit. So let's figure this out. Let's talk about what a good manager does. First thing, rules, regulations, and the playbook. You ever played a game and everybody asked, hey, let's play some cards. And I remembered how to play cards 2 years ago. And do I draw four? Do I ante first? What are wild cards? And we all need to go through this rule thing. And so we need somebody that's up to speed on the rules and the playbooks in order to play any game. And so somebody needs to be able to know and teach the rules. So then, if we don't pay attention to the rules, we're playing the game without knowing the rules. Everybody wants to bend the rules and create their own. This gets everybody into trouble. A common one we hear is, well, we've always had unit owners pay for their windows. And if you watch the show, I've brought that up several times. It's like, well, just because we did it wrong the last few times doesn't mean we have to keep doing it wrong. So now we're the board is simply a group of volunteers, right? So hopefully they have some kind of business experience, but it's doubtful that you have some management experience, legal experience, some accounting experience, some insurance experience, consultants, and contractor experience. Some of the best boards we work with have a few of these key players on there and can kind of wear their contractor hat and say, this doesn't feel right, or wear their lawyer hat and really be able to review the things with us. But it's rules, regulations, and playbook. And so I'll take you to the Hollywood movie playbook. It's kind of, and you may have heard of this. It's the hero guide script. And what I mean by that is we need to find somebody who can be your guide. And what I mean by the guide, if you look at the Sherpas that climb Mount Everest, who's been summiting Mount Everest? It's not the rich person that can afford this trip. It's the Sherpas that carry the packs every day. They know what the snow was yesterday. They know what the snow was last week. They know what the snow was last month. And they can understand the conditions. They're just carrying the packs, but they've been to the top of the mountain every day. And so now that it's our turn to get to climb up to the top of the mountain, I'm glad I have a guide with me. And so this hero Hollywood movie thing. So Luke Skywalker and the Karate Kid, they were absolute messes without their guides of Obi-Wan and Yoda and Mr. Miyagi. So the guide doesn't do the work, the hero does, but the hero relies on what that guide is saying. So find that guide. So here we're talking about manager. We can talk about the same thing in consultant or contractor. This isn't their first rodeo. That's that phrase, that's tossed around. Somebody who's done this before that can lead you to where you need to go. And they're not going to make all the decisions. And so we're going to talk about that. But somebody that knows the rules, regulations, and playbook. So what is the rules? Your CC&Rs, everyone received them and signed them when they bought the home. It's part of your mortgage packet or whatever it was, or your welcome packet. You agreed to these. And oh yeah, I saw those around there somewhere. I put them in a file somewhere. I've never seen them before. And so every time we read those together with the board, we're surprised to find out what's really in there. And it's just a reminder to everybody has the rules. They got them somewhere. And so let's make sure we're following. So I'll kind of go through these in a summary fashion. So know the rule book. That was the last slide. Somebody needs to know this stuff. Number two, know when 1955 era CC&Rs need to be updated. Know how to conduct business, know how to pass budgets and changes, know who owns what and who's responsible for what, know how to run an effective meeting, know if this particular expense is an operating expense versus a reserve expense, understand the basics of insurance, contracts, and legal. And so here's what I mean. We'll kind of go through those. We talked about the CC&Rs. Let's talk about updating. These are your set of rules. So make them work for you. Your developer initially created them to serve them, not necessarily you. Remember, your developer was running this as a condominium before turnover. So your developer wrote the set of rules, probably pretty generic, but there's probably a few little nuggets in there that benefit the developer, not necessarily the new board. So you can vote, you can change them. There's a pretty high standard to change these rules, but if everybody agrees, let's change them. So here's where we get into this. So if you're an older community, you didn't have rules about satellite dishes because they weren't around, or rental caps. We didn't think people would rent out their condos. They were to be an owned piece of property like a house, and then they became kind of rental thing. What about short-term rentals? Airbnb. That wasn't around then. How do we control this short-term rental game? Video cameras. Now there's all sorts of things. Everybody has an outdoor Ring camera, and is that a violation of my privacy? And I don't know. Not working from home. That wasn't a big thing until about 4 or 5 years ago. So take a look and review your rules, see if they're still serving you well, and then vote on them if you want to change them. They're your rules, but you're stuck with what you have right now. And so that's why it's understanding them, saying, hey, we need to kind of supplement, we need to change a few things, or I didn't like that anyway. It didn't benefit any. Oh, that's right. The developer wrote them. So let's clean those up. And so work with your HOA attorney and get your rules up to date. So knows how to conduct business. What kind of business do we need to conduct? Well, obviously, we have all this financial stuff. We got operations and reserve setting. So operations is this year's expenses. Reserves are saving for the future, and we're setting aside money for a roof in 7 years, setting aside money for painting in 6 years. And so we're saving for those future projects. But we have to set that money aside, not spend it. Is this expense? Is this operating expense? Is this reserve expense? Understanding that stuff. How to conduct business, good records and record keeping, financial audits. Maybe when we're changing all these management firms and boards and things like that, are you sure there's not maybe some things got lost in the shuffle? Maybe there actually was a hole in the boat and we need to figure out where that leak is and plug it. Knowing how to run meetings with Robert's Rules of Order. That is an art in itself. And so there's a little 7-minute video on YouTube. You can look it up. There's a short little 7-page or 5-page pamphlet that you can buy for really cheap, $3 or something like that. These are the best things ever. How to run a meeting and use Robert's Rules of Order. Dealing with lawyers and lawsuits. The association itself may get sued by someone or may have to sue someone. Boards or members sue boards and vice versa. And so just dealing with lawyers and lawsuits, risk assessment, understanding, that's kind of running or conducting business. Number 4, why are budgets important? How to change them, how to assess, how to track. We're not just getting dues, we may be getting an assessment. And so I want to make sure that Unit 4 has paid both their dues and their monthly assessment. And really, one may be late, the other may be on time. Are there penalties or late fees? So individual unit tracking, so good numbers and someone with the number ability. That's typically your treasurer, but a manager can help you with that stuff. The next thing is who owns what and who's responsible for what. So what I mean by that is windows, decks are the most common disagreement. So carefully read that stuff. Most of the time it says owners are responsible for the glass, meaning if that double pane window fogs or those panes steam up, or a golf ball comes through the window and busts the window, the owner is responsible for the glass. But the part of the frame that's nailed into the framing and covered in siding and stucco and brick and stone, that's a common element. And so if it's time to replace the windows, is it a common element? Is it a unit element? And so your CC&Rs will give some guidance on that. Same with the decks. A lot of ones we see saying the owner is responsible for the deck surface. Does that mean they have to clean it? Does that mean they have to stain it? Does that mean they have to fix it if their deck chair punctures a hole in it? Or if their barbecue deck drops a hot coal on it and burns a hole through it? So just kind of understanding who's responsible for what. And then they also say how the owners are to pay. So there's usually 2 ways. Either the owner pays themselves, which we think is kind of a bad idea because that allows random contractors, lowest bidder, whoever the resident found to do the work, and they may actually mess up the work. They put in a sloppily installed window, they do something wrong to the deck, and now that affects other common elements in the building. So that 3rd-story window gets replaced poorly, allows water intrusion to leak down on the 2nd and 1st. So if you let a whole bunch of owners do a whole bunch of different things, it's a little risky. The other way it says is the association repairs it and then back charges the owner. Just make sure you understand how that works. We think that one repair protocol is better. The owner is still paying for it. They're either paying for it up front or they're paying for it after it's done. But you, as the association, have the chance to say, here is the recipe to follow for window replacement. And that way we know all windows are being followed or being done that way. We know all HVAC mechanical, penetrations through the wall. We know all skylights and stuff like that are being done that way. So, rest of the common element repairs are paid by the association, and this can be troublesome. Half the units have decks, the other half doesn't. If decks are considered a common element, then half of the people are paying for those decks that they don't even get a chance to use. So this is an example where you might want to double check your CC&Rs a little bit and say those with a deck should be paying for deck repairs. So it can get a little tricky, but once you know your rules, you can then revise things. So number 6, how to run an effective meeting. I talked a little bit about that, but there's things like quorum. We have to have a minimum number of people here to even conduct business. And I've been at a lot of meetings where, sorry, we don't have quorum. The meeting isn't over. The meeting never started because we don't have quorum. And so making sure there's quorum there, making sure Robert's rules are followed, using little tips like agendas or timers for open mics, and then how to control an out of control meeting. So this is an art. A good manager can help you as a board. Hey, here's how you do this. Here's the tips. If this happens, do this. Number 7, understanding the difference in operating reserve. Also understanding what is a capital improvement and what is an amenity. And so there's some interesting language in there, especially around swimming pools. So this place came with a pool. I bought it because it had a pool. And now we're talking about filling in the pool because it's too expensive. Well, that was actually an amenity of the association. So do we have to keep it? So we have to keep repairing it. And yes, it's expensive. Or can we shut it down? And, then, there's a path to follow. And so before you just backfill in the pool, let's try to avoid some back and forth litigation about that. Understanding the basis of insurance, policies, indemnification, additional insured certificates, getting contractors to name you as additional insured. So there's not fighting between insurance companies when something goes wrong. Basic contracts. Please don't be signing that estimate proposal 1-page thing. It doesn't give you enough information to be able to call a contractor back for warranty purposes, or if they take your 50% down and never show up. So have a contract in place. Understand the legal process of both the HOA attorneys and construction attorneys. And so maybe you have one attorney that can do all that for you. Maybe you have a manager that knows the difference and can help you guide you through that. So that's kind of rules and regs. Keeping up with ever-changing rules and regs. So you need somebody that's up to speed on all this stuff and can stay up to speed. And so every state has a condo act or, condo rules, and those change as statutes change. So where do these people that are supposed to stay in touch with all this, where do they get training? How are they keeping up to date on this? Are they, part of an industry association such as CAI and they're getting these bulletins? Are they getting professional training from their management owners or corporate to say, here's what's going on in your state now? Rental rules, Airbnb changes, other laws that get passed around that, some fair housing things, some eviction policies, some collections, and just lots of fair housing things around that. And then I talked earlier about FCC rule changes. So that's the satellite dishes. You can't prohibit someone from having a cable dish because that's their FCC right. But we can talk to them about where they can put it on site, how they attach it to their building. They don't just screw holes through the roof. and cause a roof leak. And so these may have been technologies that are around now that weren't around back when you had your original rules. So look back 4 years. Remember COVID and the rules that came out really fast and often ambiguous. We don't have clarity on this, but you have to close your HOA clubhouse. You can't have any meetings. You have to close your pool. You have to close your gym. You can't have people in there. And so who is learning this? And that's why, just trying to be a self-managed board, who is keeping up with this stuff? So I say, it's when the rules change, who's watching. So that's the second reason. Third reason is communication. The number one complaint we hear is, I didn't know. I didn't know there was a meeting. I didn't know there was assessment. Didn't know there was a vote. I didn't know repairs were starting. I just didn't know. So being able to use multiple formats, multiple announcements, and the pink flyer on the front door or on the car under the window wiper actually works pretty well because people see it and they get it. But today's day and age, we want to be texting, we want to be instant messaging, we want to be calling. And so there's required communication and what we would call non-required communication. So encouraging and facilitating these kind of town halls. We're having an HOA meeting. No vote is going to be conducted. This isn't a formal meeting, but this is a meeting to understand what the vote's going to be about next month. And we want to share. We're going to have presenters. We're going to talk about it. We're going to listen to you. We're going to get your feedback. No vote's going to happen, but please attend. And so, even one or two of those. And so encouraging and facilitating this communication flow. Somebody who keeps track of the contact lists, especially for emergencies or problems. And so we see it all the time. I don't have a current phone number. I can't text them. I can't get a hold of Unit 6. So this stuff is tracked when they move in, when they sign, when they become part of the community, or you keep somebody keeping it updated. Is it accessible for the board? Back in the day, we had to print out a contact list and that was out of date the next day, but you had to find it. So is there an app? Is there a way to communicate? Is there an email string? Is there something that we have an emergency? It snowed last night. There's black ice in the parking lot. Stay away from the hill and whatever. Or the fire sprinklers went off in building C. We're on it. We're working on it. So just kind of this notification change. Purchase and sale information. Those welcome packages and rules to new owners go a long way. Hi, I'm a board member. Here's the welcome package. Thanks for, becoming part of our community. Here's how you can sign up. Here's how the contact list for everybody. Here's, a way to communicate with you. We want to communicate with you. And so I call it the voice, the inbox, the information hub. That's a great job for a manager and what's really, important on staying up with that stuff. Okay, project and maintenance oversight. This, having not necessarily a project manager, but a project coordinator of contractors and maintenance requests. And so these maintenance requests are everything from lights are out on the third floor hallway, or this elevator is going to be down for the next 3 days when the elevator repairman is working on it, or we're doing a deck stack. There was a fire in this building and we're getting it repaired, and here's all the adjusters and all the service masters and all those people coming in and out of the project, but really kind of a coordinator of that to keep it going. Now, the bigger projects are over and above what their regular management agreement is, and you'll see that in the fine print of the management. If you want me to be the project manager of this stuff, there's an additional fee, but it's somebody is keeping track of this stuff and somebody's keeping these projects running, and they're the point of contact for communications. They're coordinating and tracking maintenance and repairs while using your reserve study, saying, hey, we're going to replace 3 roofs this year. Next year, we'll do these roofs. And so 3 years from now, we can look back Company ABC did those 6 roofs. Company XYZ did those 6 roofs. So if there's going to be a leak, we know who to call. We know what warranty and when it was done, when it was replaced. We can feed that to the reserve study and say, it told us to do all the roofs in 2025, but we did these 6 in 2025 and these 6 in 2026. So helps you kind of keep track of that stuff and tracks the as-built with who performed and when for warranties and future replacements. So that's that. We've had a bunch of contractors out here over the last 3 years. Who exactly did these windows in this building and these decks in this building and these? So that way we can, you've often got times have a 6-year statute of limitations. So if there's a problem, you can go back to that contractor. So project coordination is a big one. Then vendor network and industry contacts. And so again, they've been this guide. They're working with lots of boards. They know who is doing good work lately. 3 years ago, that may have been a great contractor, but lately they've been having a struggle. So we're going to try a different roofer, and we've used them on a few other projects. They do a good job. So they know the contractors. They've vetted them. They're experienced with condo work, with occupied remediation, with getting their payment bills and that thing figured out with your management company and your board. They know the service oriented ones, keeping track of insurance certificates. This is a big one. So we want our contractors insured. We have last year's certificate, or we're starting a 6-month project. They gave us their insurance certificate. We notice it expires next month. Somebody's staying on them saying, okay, your insurance certificate expired. I need a new one because the project's not done yet. And so making sure that all those things are in place. They know the good reserve specialists and they can work with them. Oftentimes, they will not combine deals, but they're doing a bunch of work with this management company. So you'll get a better price instead of somebody new. But they know the reserve specialists who do a good job. They know the attorneys for HOA activities. There's HOA attorneys that do a great job with rules and process and permits and fines and penalties and foreclosures. And then there's construction defect or insurance claim attorneys. And then there may be some other kind of attorneys you need, but they tend to know the right attorneys within the field that serves condos. They know the utility companies and the tax bodies, the city departments, the building department, property related entities for your property. And then banking. So they know which have good HOA association bank terms, interest rates, investments, CD ladders, the ones that can do association loans for repairs. All these are kind of specialized. And so this vendor network and industry, again, if we're trying to do it ourselves as a volunteer board, we're just picking numbers out of Craigslist or off of Facebook Marketplace, and having somebody that has some of this vendor network and industry is really important. Okay, financial. They can understand. They don't have to be an accountant. They don't have to be a CPA, but they can get your financial, records in a timely fashion. And so we're collecting money in accounts receivable and we're paying the bills in accounts payable. And they can track operating versus reserve. We actually see a lot of mix up in there. Or we have a construction budget and other things are being taken out of the construction budget. Well, we had to do some fence repairs. Well, the construction budget isn't for fences, so don't take it out of the construction budget. And so is this a separate account? Is this just a tracked category so we can see it on paper? It's all in one bank account, but we can see it separated. And then the reserve account has to be a separate account. If you're doing any rentals, you'll have security deposit, trust accounts, and things like that. So they understand and they can track the stuff and share it with you, saying, here's how all these accounts are performed. And then I talked previously about additional items by unit. And so unit 5 may have paid their dues on time, may have paid their assessment on time, but they had this annoying little late fee that's been on the books for 6 months. And so what are we going to do about that? We don't want to let it slide. We want to talk to them. And so somebody that understands financial that can produce these, their company can produce these, and they can explain them to you and walk you through that. So it's more than just having money in the bank. Next one is using tech to manage smarter. So someone who can use technology to your advantage. You can and should automate some things. How can we make our community manageable from our phone using an app or software? How can we check or find information during our times and not just during business hours? That speeds up time, right? In the old days, it was all in their head, right? Or they had a little notebook and they were keeping track of things. And so, is it all in their head, or do we have some online storage systems and processes and communication ability with or without them? So, if we lose that manager, do we lose all that experience and stuff in their head? Can we, as a board, can I may not be the treasurer, but can I look at the financials when I have time this weekend or when I'm on the plane or something? And I can ask the treasurer a question. So is there some document sharing? So yeah, Alexa, who's running our HOA? That can be good and bad. So, but having a manager that has some tech ability where you don't have to wait between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday, because boards, we're all working at night or working. It's our volunteer job. So we should be able to access the documents. Here's the one, I call it the baseball managers are hired to be fired. So the mediator or the bad cop. So a manager is that third party to help facilitate or smooth things over between friends and neighbors. Sometimes the emotions aren't as high. You can, hey, let's get this resolved. Let's figure this out. Or there's something that needs to be figured out. You do ultimately have to deliver penalties and fines. So who's the bad cop or the enforcer? And it's that intermediary to help with difficult conversations, or is the go-between to get resolution. Avoiding always calling a lawyer to have that third party. So again, it just gets into because you shouldn't have to fine your neighbor. You shouldn't have to be mean because the board needs to do something that the board has to do. We have to conduct our business. We have to police. We have to tax. We have to do this stuff. So it's nice to have a manager being able to help you with that. And sometimes they have to wear the bad cop hat, but hopefully, if they're doing a good job, they don't have to. Fiduciary duty and trust. Find somebody that has your interests and fiduciary duties at heart. And that means acting on your behalf, not their behalf. So they're impartial, or they have no pecuniary interest. This basically means financial interest. So they're not a relative of the developer. They're not their roofer isn't the roofer working on your project isn't their boyfriend. So, or they aren't best friends with the board member, and gee, their unit gets taken care of really fast, but mine doesn't. So this friends or related business. So whether it's board members or contractors or anything, I'm acting in your financial interest or with fiduciary powers on your behalf. And arm length. It keeps the board out of trouble. The board has insurance, or you should have insurance, D&O insurance, directors and officers. And basically that policy says acts of a reasonable person. And so the law says you're volunteers, you're trying your best, you're relying on your manager to lead you, you're relying on your lawyer or whatever expert to guide you. And so kind of keeps you out of the fray a little bit if you have a manager there acting in your interest. They have your best interest in mind, and they have an insurance policy if they screw up. So, insurance policies are good to have. And just in case a big mistake is made, they have insurance policy, an E&O policy, or some kind of CGL policy to back it up, put their money where their mouth is, so to speak. So, another good reason to have kind of somebody operating for you here that's independent. Okay, what not to expect from your manager. This is the best one. Making all your decisions. They need you to decide, but they should be putting decisions in front of you for your review and decision. And so we hear it all the time. I moved into a condo so I wouldn't have to deal with home ownership issues. You can't abdicate your responsibility. And so don't expect, that's why I hired the manager. So they would just make the decision. No, they need you to make the decisions. They will be putting things in front of you. You can do a lot of the management for your community, but they can do a lot of the management for your community, but they need your input and actions as well. And so don't expect them. This is kind of related. They're not going to make the decisions, and don't think that they will do everything. And that's kind of a close conversation of, hey, what's really driving my fees? Well, here's what's driving my fees. Every time I gotta get in the car and drive out there and change a light bulb, if somebody can just have a box of light bulbs in the closet and just go do it, that saves $200 for the handyman to go out there and change a light bulb. And so, okay, there's some things a facilities committee or a group of volunteers can do, and we can work with the manager to understand what's going on. And so they need some of your action. It's not just I moved into a condo so I can lock the door and travel. Some people do, but as far as an involved board, here's what not to expect from your manager. So tech, we'll talk about that again. And we see some of this. Well, I can just chat GPT that. I can use AI. I've got an app that does all that for me. Google search turns up all the same stuff. Okay, so tech will not replace a good manager with the experience, with the personal relations, with the know-how, with the all that stuff. It should make the manager's job easier, should make your board job easier. We want to use tech, but don't expect that ChatGPT will do all this stuff or any other large language model. How's that? Expecting white glove service for lowest bid. That's one of the ones we see. My manager's supposed to do this. Manager's supposed to do that. How did you get your manager? Oh, they were low bidder. Oh, they were half the price of everybody else. Oh, okay. So don't expect white glove service if you're not paying for it. So I put that in there because we actually see it quite a bit. So if you're paying for it, then expect it. As with any to-do list, ask yourself who is going to do this. So here's all the things we got to get done. Who is going to do this? Me, as a volunteer board president? Sorry, I work all day and I've got a busy weekend life. I don't need a second job. Let's get a manager to be able to do this stuff. But here's the other things on this list. So is it all the manager? And did we clearly communicate that in our bid proposal? And so, and then bottom, they're humans too. Expect mistakes, but also expect corrective actions of, hey, I'm sorry, that ball got dropped. Here, we're picking it up. We're moving forward. Won't get dropped again. And so as consultants with a lot of boards, we hear a lot of complaining about my manager did this, my manager did that. And so it's like, are we getting the basic work done, or no, that sounds horrible. You need to find a new manager. So anyway, we're talking about this. So what not to expect, 6 things. Okay, where we see boards struggle. And this is the small associations, the 4 to 10 units, being self-managed and not even aware that they need to do these other things. So they don't get done. Or trying to do it all themselves. So instead of saying, we can't afford it, can't afford it, manager, just ask yourself who's going to do all this. And I talked about that in the last slide. This is another job with usually zero experience or training or contacts, and it's usually a pretty thankless job for volunteers. So do we have to do that? And so I say the self-managed boards are usually run by 1 or 2 overachievers that eventually burn out and move. And all that history and experience goes with them. So then the rest of the new board is, I don't know who did the roof 6 years ago. I don't know there's no meeting minutes. There's no nothing. It's just, and we've met him or we've talked to him. It's the board president is bitter and resentful, and because they have to do everything, and they're just frustrated because nobody will sign up or nobody will replace them. They didn't sign up for eternity, and so anyway, it's so instead of saying we can't afford it, just kind of ask open and honest. Okay, who's going to do it? Here's the list. Who's going to do it? Because if we don't do it, it doesn't get done. Number two, only paying for financials and thinking you have everything taken care of. You have a bookkeeper. You don't have a manager. And so, who's your management company? Oh, XYZ. Okay, great. Are they going to run with this? Well, they only do our financials. Oh, you don't have a manager. Well, we have a manager. Well, you have a bookkeeper. So you're getting one thing done, but all this other stuff we talked about, okay, that's not getting done. So again, who's going to do it? And the struggle is so the other side of the fence. I'm not just saying managers are perfect. This is, man, there are some bad managers. So putting up with bad management and thinking changing is too hard. No, it'll be too hard. Don't lose them. Knowing you are in the dark and refusing to do anything about it. So this is your choice, and your investment suffers as a result of it. And so we want to remember we have this $50 million company, and we want to see 5-10% gains. So next year it'll be 55 million. Well, if things aren't happening, it's getting run down and crime is moving in and things are falling apart, it's now a $40 million company and a 30 and a 20. And so putting up with bad management, and it isn't too hard to change. You can change. And some boards change every year just out of routine. So again, just making sure these are kind of the top three areas we see self-managed boards struggle. Okay, how to find a manager who's the right fit. Yeah, number one, checklists and where to look. What makes a manager reliable? These top qualities: communication consistency, proactive maintenance and planning, financial transparency, understanding the laws and docs, responsive to owners and boards. That's probably the same as communication. But where to look? Where do I find them? Referrals from other HOAs. Go ask your neighbor. Hey, I notice your community is really run in top shape and there's no garbage and really looks clean. Who's your manager? And do you like working with them? So it's that referral. There's also trade groups like CAI has a list of all the managers, and that's how you can reach out to several different companies. Interviewing multiple candidates, questions to ask during interviews. See the interview guide. We'll put that in the chat. Accountability standards and check-ins. So how to make a manager accountable. So we have this built-in accountability. It's just a clear contract with KPIs, key performance indicators. Things like 24-hour response or financials due on the 10th of each month, and just deadlines. And here's what we expect: regular check-ins, monthly, quarterly, whatever you as your association need. Do we need a monthly meeting? Can we get away with once a quarter? Here's a calendar of the 6 meetings we need. Use of portals and dashboards, so I don't have to call you to find out something. I can go to the dashboard and see that it's under maybe notifications. Yep, this is happening. Here's the latest date. I don't have to wait for a call or leave a message or do all that stuff. And so what to do if it goes sideways? If expectations aren't met, we can have these early interventions or escalation steps and even exit clauses in your contract. And so how to build these things in. These are accountability standards, check-ins. And then number 3, kind of red flags. Here's some common red flags: lack of communication. You're prompting your manager to do what they promised to do. Later, inaccurate financials. Those are the worst. Manager complains of too many projects and you're just one of their workload. You didn't sign up to be one of 17. That's not your problem. You signed up they would take care of you. And then just overall customer service and what you need is not being met, and including chemistry. And so chemistry means dating. They're perfectly nice, but I can't relate to them. I don't like hanging out with them. Not that they need to be your best friend, but so these are kind of the red flags of I don't know where my financials are. I don't know when our last reserve study was. And so our quote there, if you're always chasing them, it's time to let go. And so these are kind of the red flags. All right. This is a handful here. Okay. So finding the right manager is important. If you want to talk one-on-one to a building doctor, you can, if you like to type, you can type in learn.j2consultants.com/consultant/on-call, et cetera, et cetera. Or you can scan the little QR code up in the corner and that'll take us right to a calendar thing. So if you have any questions about your building, we can talk about buildings. We can also talk about your manager if you need to vent a little bit. I'm going to refer right back to this thing and say, hey, Luke Skywalker was a mess until he finally figured out how to blow up the Death Star. But that took a whole 2 hours of, Hollywood time. And, the guide's doing what they need to do. The guide can't do your job. You are the board. You need to make decisions. You need to do this stuff. But you also need to expect that they'll get back to you and do what they promised to do. And so I think we've covered some good things of why you want one, that third party intermediary, that experienced guide, that somebody that knows the rules, is updated on the rules, and you don't get blindsided by that. And for every resident group that wants to say we can't afford it, okay, great, here's a volunteer list. Who's going to take items 1 through 10? Who's going to take items 11 through 20? Let's go. Well, since nobody's doing them, we got to pay somebody to do them. That inevitably gets some more people stepping up if they aren't already. So.
This podcast is part of J2's free live webinar, The Building Doctor Show. To attend the live show and ask your questions during the Q&A, visit www.j2consultants.com.